Well, Mr. Yazel, back to our subject at hand. We're talking about the Broken Arrow bond issue for the school district over here, which is a whopping $295 million. It goes before the voters of Broken Arrow on December 8th, coming up here in just a couple of weeks.
Let me say this. These are issues I normally try to stay out of at the local level, but I got fired up recently hearing people misleading the taxpayers, and it slops over into other school districts, and I just want to get the record straight for the taxpayers about how some of these things work, rather than just sit back in the sidelines and be quiet. I'm paid by every taxpayer in this county to do my job, and I take that serious, and that's why I'm speaking up. I expend a lot of political capital talking about these issues, but they're important for people to understand. The biggest thing I learned when I got in office, people don't understand property taxes, and it's taken me a while to get it all figured out, too. Anything over 54 mils, that's dollars per thousand on valuation, we do it to ourselves, and we're up in Broken Arrow, 129, the weighted average, 129 mils last year. Everything above 54 mils, all the way up to 130, has been a local vote of the people. And people need to understand that. They're in control of their destiny. And it would seem like that isn't much, but it's huge. It's millions and millions of dollars that we could stimulate our economy with if we would not keep raising taxes on ourselves. We are leveling off in fair market value. There is not a difference between fair market value and taxable of 5% anymore. These taxes aren't going to go up 5%. And I heard some people promoting this bond thing saying the actuaries did this and looked at history, and sometimes we go up 28. It isn't going to happen in the future. And if you subscribe to the theory that Oklahoma has a delayed reaction to what's happened nationally, we are not at the bottom in property values. And as these property values go down, the taxable will not go up, and we will not be raising enough money for some of these bond issues. The burden is horrendous, and we need to realize it and put a stop to it.
What's the scoop on this?
Well, it's a lot of money, and I'm not sure it's been totally vetted as to what the money's going for, but it's probably a first for Broken Arrow. In fact, I think it is. It's a lease purchase type thing on the buildings that they're going to build and that whatnot, and there's some inherent problems in that. As a businessman, when I go and buy a piece of property or borrow on it, I own it. What happens in Broken Arrow if 7, 8 years into this 10-year project, things take a dive like the stock market did last year and like the market seems to be doing here currently? And we don't have the projected amount of collection of taxes to pay these bonds. And if we're like L.A. Municipal who defaulted on bonds, all of a sudden we've defaulted on something and we don't own anything. This is a lease purchase. We haven't purchased the property yet.
So we could lose that property, essentially.
It looks like it to me. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't like contracting for deed, and that's what it seems like. And trust me, we got permanent millage in this county going to entities that can't spend all the money, and they've got at least half of this bond issue in the bank carried over from last year. So when we look at reprioritizing things, we got it kind of backwards on the burden on our taxpayers, and we need to work on that. That includes Wagner County, by the way.
We could reallocate some of the dollars we're already spending. That's what I hear you're saying.
If we got creative, yes.
Right, we could reallocate some of those dollars to cover this.
The money's already been, half of the amount of this bond issue has already been sucked out of the taxpayers' pockets, sitting in a bank someplace in the name of some of these other entities. And I find that in Broken Arrow, where last year, weighted average, anyone owning property in Broken Arrow had the highest millage rate burden in the state of Oklahoma. And that's not a good area to be raising permanent school taxes, in my mind. I have nothing against schools, but I don't see anything in this bond issue making kids smarter, testing better, and more prepared for an existence in the real world. The schools request their needs, the cities request their needs, the county requests their needs, and almost everybody requests the maximum allowed by the voters instead of just asking for the money they need. So when they ask for too much money, they take it out of your pockets, taxpayers, and it goes in the bank and they invest it for you until they can dream up a way to spend it. 2 years I worked at a precinct I kept a tally. 8 or 10% of the voters showed up for these bond issues, and over 70% of the people who did vote came in there. They had a vested interest in it passing. And most of them asked me to sign something saying they voted so they could go back and show their boss, their school, or whoever they worked for, that they voted that day. And I don't like that kind of, taxpayer people and money out there putting pressure to raise taxes, and 90% of the people aren't even involved. We are the highest tax county in the state. The nearest one to us is $108, $109. That's Oklahoma County. We're at $122. The state average is $99. The cheapest one in the state is 50-some. Anything above 54 mills is our doing here as voters. And I'd like to say that it's not the voters. It's the 8 or 10% of the people who show up to vote on a bond day. For us to sit here and project what a library need is in 9 years from now on a bond issue, I think is short-sighted. We need to look at what they need, maybe partner up with City County Library. Do something to keep the burden from continuing to rise on the taxpayers. You have to rely on these boards of education not to ask for the maximum amount of money just so they could have it and put it in the bank. That's not going to happen. But if they were conscious of what they're doing to the taxpayers, they would do that.